Let's pull back the curtain on something that's quietly influencing almost every single financial choice you make. Seriously. From what you buy at the store to the salary you end up with, there's a hidden bias at play. We're going to dive right in. So, have you ever been in a situation like this? You're out shopping, maybe for a gift, and you see something that's just way over budget. Then a little later, you spot something else. It's still a bit pricey, but compared to that first item, it suddenly feels like a steal. Why on earth does our brain do that? Well, here's a perfect example. Imagine you walk into a store and the first thing you see is a t-shirt for $1,200. It's shocking, right? That price sets a mental benchmark. So when you see the next t-shirt for $100, your brain doesn't really evaluate it on its own. Nope. It compares it to that first insane price, and suddenly $100 feels totally reasonable. This whole thing actually has a name. It's called the anchoring bias. And what it means is that we have this tendency to just latch onto the very first piece of information we get. That's the anchor. And we let it completely, and often unfairly, influence all the decisions that come after. It doesn't matter if the number is relevant or totally random, it skews our judgment. So how does this actually work in our brains? It's basically a two-step mental shortcut. First, your brain just grabs onto an initial number. That's the anchor. Then you try to adjust your thinking away from it. But here's the catch. We almost never adjust far enough. That first number has this powerful, gravitational pull that keeps us from moving too far away from it. And if you think it has to be a relevant number, get this. There was a famous study where people were asked to write down the last two digits of their social security number before bidding on stuff. The result? People with higher numbers, say 80 or 90, consistently bid way more than people with low numbers. A completely random number anchored their entire perception of value. Is wild. Okay, so let's take this out of the lab and into the real world, because this isn't just about shopping for t-shirts. This bias sneaks into some of the biggest financial moments of our lives, especially when it's time to talk about your salary. This quote from Harvard Law School's program on negotiation pretty much says it all. In any negotiation, the first number that gets put on the table is incredibly powerful. It sets the anchor. It frames the entire rest of the conversation, and more often than not, it decides who walks away with a better deal. So let's just imagine this for a second. You're in a job interview. It's going great, you're excited, and you know exactly what you're worth. But then, the hiring manager makes the first offer, and it's just disappointingly low. Even if you know it's a lowball offer, that number is now stuck in your head. And that's the crucial part. That low number becomes the anchor. It basically drags down the entire zone of possibility for the rest of the negotiation. Every single counteroffer you make from that point on is now unconsciously being pulled toward that low starting point, which makes it so much harder to climb up to the salary you actually deserve. All right, so knowing this bias exists is one thing, but what do you actually do about it? How do you fight back and reclaim control when someone drops a really low anchor on you? I want you to really think about this. You get that lowball offer, what's your gut reaction? It's probably to just fire back immediately with a much higher number, right? But our research shows that's a huge mistake. There's a critical step you have to take first. The key is you have to diffuse their anchor before you even think about setting your own. Don't just make a counteroffer. You need to explicitly reject their number. You could say something like, based on the market rates for this role and the value I'll bring, that number is just not in the ballpark of what I'm considering. You have to break the power of their anchor first. So here's your game plan. Step 1, recognize the anchor for what it is. It's not a fact, it's a tactic. Step 2, diffuse it. Call it out, say it's unacceptable. And only then, step 3, do you re-anchor the conversation with your number, a number that's backed up by solid research. Okay, so now that you know how to play defense, let's flip the script. How do you start using this powerful psychological tool to your own advantage? The answer is actually pretty simple, but it's a game changer. You have to be the one to make the first offer. Whenever you can, go first. By doing that, you get to be the one who sets the anchor. You frame the entire negotiation around your number, and that immediately puts you in a much more powerful position. And here's a pro tip from the experts. When you do make that first offer, be precise. A number like $98,500 just feels more credible, doesn't it? It feels more researched than a big round number like $100,000. A precise number acts as a much stronger anchor because it signals that you've really done your homework. This isn't just a number you pulled out of thin air. So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. Whether you're in a store or at a negotiating table, you have to remember that the first number you hear is not a fact. It's a strategy. It's a move designed to anchor your perception. And your job is to see it, to diffuse it, and to use this knowledge to your advantage. Honestly, knowing this shifts the power right back to you. It gives you the ability to see the invisible forces that are at play in all your financial decisions. So the final question is pretty simple. Now that you know the rules of the game, who's going to be setting the terms next time?